Welcome to Dark Verse. I'm Isaac Nightshade, and tonight we travel to a town you thought you knew, a place of donuts, chalkboards, and endless Sundays. But behind the cartoon smiles and Technicolor skies, something has always been watching. This is Springfield, but not the one you remember, when static creeps through the walls of 742 Evergreen Terrace, when a baby begins to whisper in languages never spoken, and when a key is found beneath a crib. The Simpsons begin to unravel the truth. Their lives are part of something older, something mechanical, something alive, and it remembers every version of them. A chair, a choice, a loop that never ends. This is the Sound Beneath Evergreen Terrace, a Simpsons horror story, and you're not just watching it, you're already inside it. Chapter 1. Static in the Walls. Marge had been hearing it for weeks. Not loud, not all the time. Just there. A thin, whispering crackle, like distant radio fuzz or the gentle friction of dry leaves dragged across carpet. It came from inside the walls, sometimes behind the kitchen cabinet, sometimes beneath the bathroom floor tiles, once, terrifyingly, from under Maggie's crib. She hadn't told Homer. He'd laugh, or worse, he'd pretend to listen, then drift off mid-conversation and mutter something about bacon-wrapped hot dogs. But she'd started keeping notes, in the margins of her grocery lists, on Post-its stuck to the side of the fridge. 4:42 a.m., kitchen, like a dial turning. 2:17 p.m., hallway knob behind picture frame, humming, metallic. 3:08 a.m., Maggie turned her head, but didn't wake up. This morning, she'd nearly dropped a glass when the bathroom mirror let out a soft pop, like static snapping between fingers. Her reflection had lagged for half a second, just long enough to be noticed, just long enough to feel wrong. Downstairs, the house still smelled faintly of eggs from breakfast and the sugary trail of pancake syrup across the counter. Maggie sat in, the playpen, eyes locked not on the spinning toy above her head, but on the small vent above the TV. She was perfectly still. The light outside was a gray, murky kind of bright, clouds full but not storming, the kind of sky that kept everything a few shades too pale. The neighborhood looked like someone had turned the contrast knob down a little too far. Bart hadn't come down for breakfast. Lisa was in the garage with a soldering iron and a milk crate full of broken electronics. She wasn't building anything specific, just taking things apart, arranging the innards in patterns across the floor. She said it helped her think. In his room, Bart lay sideways on his bed, staring at the ceiling fan. It didn't spin anymore. He'd yanked the pull cord too hard last week and broke it, but the base still made this little ticking sound every now and then. Tick, tick, like it was trying to turn itself. He hadn't been sleeping well. Not nightmares. He wished it were nightmares. It was the dreams. Vivid. Too crisp. Too real. Not crazy monster stuff either. Mundane things. Him walking into the kitchen and finding the table moved a few inches to the left. Seeing Homer at the table in total silence. No food, just sitting. Or hearing Lisa playing the sax in the middle of the night in the wrong key. He didn't tell anyone. He just started skipping breakfast, started sleeping with socks on. Little things to keep himself grounded. Out on the street, a moving truck had parked in front of the old Peabody house. It had been empty for years after the family moved out, and nobody really talked about why. The lawn stayed mostly dead, but the windows were always clean. The new family hadn't come out yet, just the movers. Two pale men in matching gray jumpsuits unloading boxes that didn't have any writing on them. No tape, no labels, just cardboard. Plain. Ned Flanders stood in his driveway, pretending to inspect his mailbox while watching them. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it, like pressure in his chest. He'd woken up this morning with the taste of iron in his mouth and couldn't remember his dream. Rod and Todd had been whispering to each other during breakfast. He didn't catch all of it, but he heard the word mirror 3 times, and the phrase, "Mom was blinking weird again." At the Quickie Mart, the lights flickered for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Apu cursed under his breath and opened the breaker box in the back hallway, only to find the switches untouched. He froze. The dust on the panel had been disturbed in one spot. A perfect circle, the size of a silver dollar, wiped clean in the center. He raised a hand to touch it and pulled away at the last second. Outside, the clouds deepened. There was no thunder, no wind, just a single sharp sound. Somewhere in Springfield. A click. Chapter 2. Patterns in Dust. Lisa didn't think much of it at first. It was just a line of dust on the floor of the garage, right beneath the pegboard where Homer kept his tools, most of them still wrapped in plastic. It was maybe 2 inches thick and perfectly straight, unnaturally so, not swept, not brushed, not disturbed, just formed, like someone had dragged a ruler through the layer of garage grime without stepping once inside. She stared at it while her soldering iron cooled on the workbench. Then she followed it. It led to the wall, disappeared into the space where the drywall met the floor. That alone wouldn't be strange, but it was the shape of the line that bothered her. It didn't match any drainage pattern or airflow draft she knew about. She reached for her notebook, but it wasn't there. She always kept it next to the toolbox. Always. Instead, there was a single piece of paper, folded once, placed neatly on the workbench. Not her paper, not her handwriting. On it was a symbol, 2 circles overlapping, like a Venn diagram, but imperfect, jagged where they crossed. The ink looked faded, like it had been printed decades ago. Lisa didn't know what scared her more, the fact someone left it, or the idea that she hadn't heard them. That night, Marge had the dream again. She stood in the kitchen, holding Maggie, but everything was too still. There were no smells, no buzz of the fridge, no rustle of leaves through the half-open window. Just silence. Then the TV turned on, static, full volume. Maggie didn't move, didn't blink, and from behind the pantry door came the sound. Crack, 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 like joints popping, like something unfolding itself after a long sleep. She woke up before it came out. She always did. But now every time she opened the pantry in the morning, she braced for the smell of rot. It never came. Not yet. Bart skipped school the next day. It wasn't a decision, really. Just something that happened. He woke up to find his shoes turned backwards at the foot of the bed. When he went to grab his skateboard, one wheel was missing. But there was a tiny smear of what looked like blood near the axle. So instead of taking the bus, he just walked. Past the school, down toward the industrial edge of town, where the old textile mill used to be before it burned down back in '92. He didn't know what he was looking for, just that he needed to be away from the house. He passed the lot with the chain-link fence and the do not enter signs. Most kids said there was a sinkhole behind it. Some said a sewer pipe exploded. Others whispered about government testing. Bart didn't believe any of that. But when he stopped walking, he realized he'd come straight here anyway. The fence had been cut. Not with wire cutters, with something hot. The edges were melted, and inside the hole in the fence, the dirt had been moved, like something had crawled up from beneath. At the power plant, Homer stared at the console blinking blue for the 5th time that morning. He didn't know what ECOREADERROR 142-N meant. He'd tried, smacking it, then tried ignoring it, then smacked it again. Lenny leaned over the divider. "Didn't that code pop up last week too?" "Probably," Homer muttered. "It goes away after lunch sometimes." But Carl was squinting at the screen, chewing the inside of his cheek. "Nah, this one's new. And look, it keeps pulsing, like a heartbeat." They all stared at the blinking light. Thump, thump, thump. "Okay," said Homer, standing. "I'm getting a donut." As he walked away, the light on the console flickered once, then off, then came back on. But now it was red. That evening, Lisa finally told someone. She sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, the strange paper on her lap, and whispered her thoughts to Maggie, who sat across from her, chewing on a rubber giraffe. "I think it's under the house," Lisa said quietly. "Something old. Something waiting. Maggie blinked. I know that sounds crazy, but the way the dust moved, the crack in the garage, the dreams, something's trying to draw a pattern. She looked down at the symbol again. The overlapping circles. She didn't hear Maggie stand up, didn't see her tiny hand reach out and trace the shape with her finger, almost perfectly, from memory. Then Maggie looked up, pacifier dangling, and said her first word in weeks. Down. Chapter 3. The Things That Wait. The storm didn't make a sound when it came. The clouds had hung low and heavy over Springfield all afternoon. Gray-green, cottony things with an oily sheen, and yet not a single drop of rain had fallen. People noticed, but only in the way they noticed traffic or soup that was too salty. In the Quickie Mart, someone muttered that their phone signal had vanished. At the school, the intercom crackled once, then cut out for the rest of the day. And at 742 Evergreen Terrace, the house had gone. Quiet. Not peaceful, just wrong. Still, like it was listening. Lisa stayed in her room after the incident with Maggie. She didn't tell anyone that Maggie spoke. Not because she was afraid they wouldn't believe her, but because of the way she'd said it. The word wasn't babbled. It was placed, as if it belonged somewhere. Down. Lisa had checked the basement door 3 times since then. Nothing unusual, nothing visible. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the floorboards near the washing machine were newer, slightly warped, like something had been pried up and replaced without permission. That night she opened her notebook again and tried to draw the sound. Not what it looked like, not even what it felt like, but its pattern, the intervals, the pulses, the movement through rooms like water under pressure. She traced it in concentric ripples across the page until her pencil broke. Bart never made it back to the old fence. He tried, took his bike right after dinner, but the streets felt longer somehow, like they'd stretched during the day. The corner near the burned-out car wash looked different. The trees leaned slightly in the wrong direction, and there were fewer streetlights than he remembered. Or maybe they just weren't turning on. He pedaled harder, but halfway there, he heard something that made him skid to a stop. Clink, pause, clink, metal on metal. He was in the alley behind the pet store. Empty. No one around. Clink. A soda can rolled toward him from the shadows. It stopped at his front tire. He waited. Nothing followed it. Bart picked it up. It was ice cold, unopened. Then he turned it in his hand and saw what was scratched into the aluminum. It breathes. He dropped it, hopped on the bike, pedaled home without looking back. Back at the house, Homer sat in the garage drinking beer from a coffee mug and staring at the washing machine. It had been making this low thumping sound all week, like it was off balance. Marge asked him to fix it twice, but every time he opened the door, the drum stopped perfectly still. No noise, no problem. He opened the lid again now. The clothes sat limp. No water, no power light, but the inside of the drum was warm and wet. He reached inside, half expecting something to grab him. Instead, his fingers found something in the very back. A button. Plastic. Pale blue. With 4 holes. He didn't recognize it. Not Maggie's. Not Marge's. Not his. As he held it up to the light, he realized it had a smear on the underside. Faint. But there. A fingerprint. Smaller than Maggie's. Marge sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair. 50 strokes every night. Her mother taught her that. Only now the brush was missing 5 bristles, and one corner was chipped. She paused at stroke 42. The mirror didn't reflect her arm moving. It reflected her sitting perfectly still. She blinked. So did the reflection, but it smiled. She turned away and refused to look again. Maggie hadn't slept in hours, at least not like a baby sleeps. She lay in the crib with her eyes wide, staring at the ceiling vent. Occasionally she would blink. Once she laughed, a dry, whispered giggle that didn't sound like hers. And then, around 2:03 a.m., she sat up, slowly, silently, and reached between the crib bars to the floor. There was nothing there, until she pulled back her hand and revealed a single item, a key, not from any door in the house, not from this house. Chapter 4. What Doesn't Belong. Springfield's town hall didn't smell like paper anymore. Not old paper, not new. It smelled like dust that had forgotten where it came from. Lisa sat in the corner of the public records room with a stack of microfiche and a dull pencil, flipping through documents that hadn't seen daylight in decades. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for. Just that things didn't feel right. The way the sky had been too still. The way Maggie said down. The way no one else seemed to notice the silence pressing in at night. Like the town was waiting to exhale. What started as a search for blueprints turned into something else entirely. She found a map from 1946, then one from 1973, then another from 1990. Each one showed Springfield's layout. Main Street, the power plant, the school, the church. But each map was slightly different. Not in the ways you'd expect. Not new streets or zoning changes. It was the angles. The way Evergreen Terrace curved just slightly differently in each drawing. The power plant's location inching westward over time. A road that appeared for a few years, mallow, way and then vanished from all records. And in the center of it all, an unlabeled circle. No street, no name, just a void, always present. Sometimes beneath the school, sometimes beneath the library, once, terrifyingly, beneath her own house. She flipped back through the maps. The void moved. But the rest of the town adapted around it. She circled it on every page, her pencil pressing harder each time. What was that space? Why did no one talk about it? Bart hadn't gone to school. Again. He told Milhouse he had a dentist appointment. Milhouse nodded solemnly, as if that explained everything. Instead, Bart walked past the old convenience store on Hooper Avenue, the one with boarded windows and signs sun-faded beyond legibility. He walked past the junkyard, past the old water tower with the cracked "Go Isotopes" sign. He ended up where the ground sank beneath the sidewalk, the place with the melted fence and the clawed dirt, where the air buzzed faintly like a refrigerator, coil warming the back of your neck. He ducked inside. It wasn't much of a tunnel, more like a path cleared through collapsed foundation and half-rotted beams, but it went somewhere. He walked. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. Not freezing, just dry, hollow, like the place had never held breath. After 5 minutes, he found a wall. Not stone, not brick, metal, smooth, cold to the touch, seamless except for a small triangle etched into it. He pressed his hand against it. Nothing happened. Then the light changed, not brighter, not darker, just other. He looked up. There was no ceiling anymore, only black and something in it. Back home, Marge stood in the basement with her hand on the washing machine. She wasn't sure why. The hum had returned, not loud, not mechanical, organic. It vibrated through her palm like a heartbeat from deep underground. She could almost feel the pattern now, like Morse code but slower, ancient. She glanced at the floor where the boards warped slightly. She got the crowbar from the toolbox. It felt too light in her hands. Lisa didn't come home until after dark. She carried the maps with her, folded into a thick envelope, and hid them beneath her mattress before going to dinner. No one mentioned her being late. No one mentioned the smell of ozone in the living room. No one mentioned that Maggie's crib had been turned 90 degrees since the morning. Not even Maggie. She was sleeping, they assumed. But when Lisa leaned in to kiss her forehead, Maggie opened her eyes, wide, and smiled. Chapter 5. The blackout that wasn't Bart didn't remember coming home. He remembered the metal wall, the triangle, the vanishing ceiling. But after that, nothing. One moment he had been staring into that void, feeling it stare back, and the next he was in bed, fully dressed, shoes still on, a smear of dirt across his cheek, his heart beating like he'd just run from something that didn't move. The light from the hallway was flickering, soft and unnatural, like the bulb was breathing. Downstairs, someone was crying. He got up slowly, avoiding the floorboards he knew would creak. Made his way down one stair at a time, only half certain he was awake. The crying was coming from the kitchen. It was Homer. Head in his hands, elbows on the table, a bowl of cereal in front of him, milk untouched, cereal bloated. The box of Crusty O's lay on its side, spilled across the floor like someone had knocked it over, hours ago and never cleaned it up. Bart stood in the doorway and said nothing. Homer didn't look up. Marge never got the floor open. She'd tried. She'd gotten the crowbar wedged under the seam of the warped planks, pressed all her weight down with a grunt, and felt it begin to give. Then the lights went out, not just in the basement, everywhere. Total, suffocating darkness. She froze. Somewhere above her, a muffled thud. Then another. Footsteps? No. Too soft. More like paws, pads. The crowbar clanged to the floor. She didn't pick it up. Just stood there, eyes adjusting to nothing, pulse echoing in her ears. The hum returned. Louder, closer, and then light. The power flicked back on. The hum gone. The floorboards back in place, undisturbed. And the crowbar? Missing. Lisa was in the school library when it happened. 1 minute she was flipping through the town's utility grid reports, and the next, everything blinked out. No noise, no alarms, no people. The silence pressed in like cotton against her ears. She reached for her backpack, but her hand met something else. A folder, not hers. Inside it, photocopies of old letters, newspaper clippings, building permits stamped in red. At the bottom, a photo, black and white, faded. Springfield Elementary, but older, dustier. Standing in front of it, a group of children, 30, maybe 40, all expressionless. One of them looked like Lisa, not similar, identical. The date on the back said 1961. Outside, all across town, the same thing happened. A blackout, 3 minutes, and no one remembered. Ned Flanders stood in front of his microwave blinking 12 o'clock and couldn't recall how he got from the bedroom to the kitchen. Apu found all the gum in the Quickie Mart perfectly sorted by flavor, but didn't remember doing it. Skinner stood in the empty hallway of the school, holding a whistle he didn't own. And Mo, wiping down the bar, looked up at the TV to find a new channel broadcasting the iWatches. Then it cut to static. Later that night, Bart found the triangle burned into the sole of his shoe. Lisa couldn't stop staring at her reflection in the microwave because it blinked before she did. And Marge, folding laundry on the couch, paused when she pulled a onesie from the basket. Not Maggie's. The tag was written in symbols she couldn't read. She dropped it, heart pounding, and stared at the ceiling. From Maggie's crib came the faint sound of whispering, but when she entered the room, Maggie was asleep and smiling. Chapter 6. The New Girl. The girl's name was Ivy, or at least, that's what the attendance list said. Lisa noticed her first during morning announcements. A pale child with sharp bangs and two wide eyes sitting in the second row of Mrs. Hoover's classroom, hands folded neatly on the desk. She hadn't been there yesterday, or the day before, but no one seemed surprised to see her, not even the teacher. Hoover just said, "Welcome, Ivy," and moved on, like the girl had always been part of the class. Lisa raised her hand. "Yes, Lisa. Where did she transfer from?" Mrs. Hoover blinked. "Who?" Lisa hesitated. "Ivy." A pause, then, "Oh, out of district, I believe." No one laughed. No one whispered. Even Ralph, who usually stuck spoons to his face during lectures, sat eerily still beside Ivy, staring straight ahead. At recess, Lisa approached her. Ivy sat on the swing, gently rocking, not moving. Her feet. "Hi," Lisa said. The girl turned, smiled. Her teeth were too white, too flat. "You're the one who hears it," Ivy said softly. Lisa stiffened. "Hears what?" "The low noise. The one under the house." Lisa said nothing. "Don't worry," Ivy added. "It likes you." She pushed off the swing and drifted away. Her shoes didn't leave any marks in the gravel. That night, Bart woke up to find the triangle again, this time on his ceiling, drawn in what looked like pencil, but shimmered faintly when he moved. He sat up, rubbed his eyes. The symbol was still there. Then he noticed his notebook was open across the room, pages filled with rough sketches he didn't remember making. Geometries, tunnels, something shaped like a tree but made of arteries. He flipped to the last page. It read in his handwriting, "The key is under her crib." Marge had locked Maggie's door. She didn't feel good about it. But the night before, she had found the baby monitor on the windowsill, facing out. That wasn't where she left it. That wasn't where anyone left it. She checked the room thoroughly. Windows locked, closet empty, floorboards solid. But sometime after midnight, she heard it again. A faint click-click against the floorboards. Tiny, rhythmic. Maggie crawling. Marge sat in the hallway, holding a flashlight, staring at the locked door. She didn't remember falling asleep, but she woke up just before dawn, and the door was unlocked. At school the next day, Ivy wasn't in class. Lisa asked where she went. Mrs. Hoover looked confused. "Who?" Lisa stared at the desk. Empty, but her notebook was gone, replaced by a single page, a pencil drawing of Springfield Elementary, cut open like a dollhouse. Beneath it, tunnels. Beneath those, something coiled, a caption written in block letters. "It remembers." Meanwhile, Principal Skinner was sealing the east wing of the school with padlocks and a bucket of rock salt. He didn't explain why. When groundskeeper Willie asked, Skinner only said, "There's something growing in the janitor's closet." Chapter 7. Beneath and between it started with the phone book. Lisa found it in the hallway near the kitchen. She picked it up, curious. It had been years since anyone in the house used a phone book. The cover was blank. No logo. No title. Just matte yellow. Inside, the pages were filled with names. Thousands of them. Springfield residents, maybe. But none Lisa recognized. She flipped, quickly frowning. Then stopped. Halfway through the book, the names changed. Became symbols. Glyphs that twisted and bled into one another. Letters that looked like they wanted to move off the page. She dropped it. From the kitchen, Marge called, "Lisa, sweetie, can you bring me the—" Silence. Lisa turned toward the voice. There was no one in the kitchen, only the faint sound of static. That night, Bart waited until everyone was asleep. He crept into Maggie's room, the eerie flashlight shaking slightly in his hand, and quietly pushed aside the edge of the crib. She didn't stir, just lay there on her back, sucking quietly on her pacifier, eyes open, watching him. He crouched low, heart hammering. There, beneath the crib, was a tiny hole in the floor, not big enough to see through, just wide enough for fingers. He reached in, his hand closed around something cold and metallic. He pulled it out. It was a key, old, brass, ornate, but worn smooth by time. The teeth were oddly shaped, too long. As he held it up to the flashlight beam, he heard Maggie giggle softly. He looked up. She was standing now, still in the crib, but taller, her face in shadow, smiling. Lisa broke into the east wing during lunch. The locks had been cut, the salt pushed aside like it had never been there. The hallway beyond the door was cold, too cold, and wrong. The floor sloped slightly downward, so subtly she didn't notice at first. The lockers were dented. The ceiling buzzed like it was holding back pressure, and there was a smell, damp wires, burnt rubber, and beneath that, something older, like soil that hadn't seen daylight in centuries. She reached the janitor's closet. The door was ajar. Inside was a spiral staircase, descending into darkness, painted on the wall in thick black strokes. Only the forgotten may enter. She didn't descend. Not yet. Marge found Maggie in the attic. That was strange enough, but the attic was locked. Had been. Locked since the raccoon incident 3 years ago. And the key, still hanging on the hallway hook. Yet there Maggie sat, surrounded by dust-covered boxes, wide awake, humming to herself. She had drawn something in the dust, a symbol, two circles, one inside the other, with a line through the middle. Marge didn't recognize it, but she'd seen it before, on Bart's ceiling, on Lisa's page, on the metal wall. At the school, Principal Skinner stood in the sealed hallway alone, whispering into a walkie-talkie that wasn't connected to anything. "The lock didn't hold," he said. "She saw the stairwell." No response. "I don't think she's the first." Still silence. Skinner lowered the device, looked down at his hand. The palm was raw, blistered, the shape of a key burned into the skin. He didn't remember picking one up. Elsewhere, deep beneath the town, far beneath the school, beneath the streets, beneath the false soil and the misremembered concrete, a vast, circular chamber waited, silent, empty, almost. In the center stood something tall and smooth and pulsing faintly with light. A sound began, dull and low, like breath moving through stone, and above in the ceiling that wasn't really a ceiling, the triangle blinked. Chapter 8, The Memory Engine. Lisa didn't tell anyone she was going back. After school, while the rest of the students filed out like ghosts on rails, she doubled back through the cafeteria, slipped past the locked supply room, and opened the east wing door. It was colder than before. The floor moaned beneath her feet like it hadn't been walked in years. Dust stuck to the air, thick and shifting like it was thinking. Waiting. At the bottom of the stairwell, a metal door stood open. Beyond it, silence and a light. The chamber beneath Springfield Elementary wasn't what she expected. There were no skulls, no ritual circles, no bones or blood or chains, just machines, dozens of them, towering things of brass and iron covered in levers, gears, and knobs with unreadable labels. Wires dangled from the ceiling like vines. The floor was concrete, but too smooth, like it had been poured in one movement. In the center stood a chair, not a throne, just a basic wooden chair, worn and grooved from use. Around it, 7 screens, all showing the same street, Evergreen Terrace. But on one screen, the house had no second floor. On another, the windows were boarded. On a third, the sky was green. Lisa stepped closer. Her face appeared in the reflection of one screen, superimposed over the house, and the screen flickered. It showed her, older, worn, eyes sunken, standing in front of 742 Evergreen Terrace. She reached for the dial, and something in the machine hissed. That same afternoon, Bart found himself in the basement with the key. He didn't remember walking there, but he stood now at the edge of the floorboards Marge had tried to pry open. The wood no longer resisted. He slid the crowbar in, lifted. Beneath the boards, a hatch. Old metal, no handle, only a keyhole. He inserted the key. It turned easily, and the hatch opened. No fanfare, no smoke, just a staircase. Down, always down. Maggie didn't nap that day. She sat in the crib, head tilted slightly, watching the corner of the room. Sometimes she giggled, sometimes she whispered, but not in English. It was softer, curved, like a melody unraveling backward. Marge stood outside the room, frozen, listening. Then, like a wind passed through the walls, Maggie turned toward the door and spoke. "Mommy!" Marge's heart seized. She hadn't called her that in over a year. Maggie smiled. Then, with a voice that wasn't quite hers, "You were the first to forget." The second blackout began at 3:14 a.m. All of Springfield flickered. Not just the power, the town. Lights out, air still. Every clock paused. No alarms, no footsteps. Just stillness. Then the lights returned. But something was gone. Not someone, something. A building. The old crusty burger on Main. Where it had stood was now a vacant lot. Weeds, cracks. No one remembered what used to be there, except Lisa. Lisa remembered the smell of burnt oil, the cracked clown statue outside. She remembered Bart once saying the fries tasted like dog tears and freedom. But when she asked Marge where they used to get burgers on Friday nights, Marge said, "What burgers?" Lisa didn't answer. She just looked out the window. At the way the sky now pulsed, ever so faintly, like something under the town was breathing again. Chapter 9. The Adjustment Principle. Lisa sat in the chair. The wooden grooves fit her like a memory. The machines surrounding her had begun to hum. A vibration, not sound, felt more than heard. Like standing near a subway train, waiting for it to arrive, knowing you're on the wrong platform. She reached for the dial again. The screens lit up, each showing a different version of the same street. One had 3 sons. One showed no people at all. One was just fog, no buildings, no sound. She turned another dial. A voice crackled through a speaker overhead. Her voice. Simulation 13. Corrupted by repetition error. Agent L-92 failed to comply. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She looked down. The armrest had names carved into it. Over and over. Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. Some with slashes through them. Some half erased. She wasn't the first. Bart descended further than he should have. The tunnel beneath the hatch spiraled tighter than any staircase had a right to. The walls were smooth stone, pulsing faintly with light. The air was thick with dust that didn't float. It clung. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a round chamber. And at the center was a door. Not wood, not metal. Skin, pale, stretched, veined. The key vibrated in his hand. It wanted to be used. He turned it slowly in the hidden notch along the base. The door opened. It didn't swing. It peeled. Beyond it was nothing. Not darkness, not space, just nothing. And something inside it began to move toward him. Marge awoke to find Maggie gone. No crib, no baby monitor. The room was empty. The wallpaper was torn in a perfect circle, burned slightly at the edges. She ran through the house, calling her name. Nothing. Then, on the TV, which had turned itself on, Maggie's voice. Soft. "Mommy?" The screen flickered. The image was upside down, and behind Maggie stood the shape from Lisa's drawings, the one with no face and too many arms. Marge fell to her knees and began to remember things she didn't know she'd forgotten. At the school, Lisa flipped the final switch. The machines groaned. The screens blinked red. And for a moment, one still, expanding moment, Springfield paused. No cars, no people, no time. Then the machine spoke. "Convergence breached. Reset required. Awaiting confirmation." A blinking cursor appeared on one screen. Accept. Refuse. Lisa hovered her hand. She thought of her mother, of Bart, of Maggie. Then she thought of Ivy, of the forgotten girl with the flat teeth who smiled without blinking, of the versions of herself burned into the chair, of the town that rethreaded itself every time someone got too close. She reached out and pressed. Springfield woke to birdsong. A bright day, clean sidewalks, fresh coffee. The Simpsons sat around the breakfast table. Maggie in her high chair, Lisa flipping through a textbook, Bart already halfway through a bowl of cereal, Marge humming to herself as she poured juice, Homer reading the paper. "Says here the old crusty burger's getting remodeled. Been a while since we had one, huh?" Nobody answered. Not directly. Lisa looked out the window. The sky was just a little too blue. In the distance, a single screen, buried in dirt, covered in moss, blinked softly. Waiting. The end. The Sound Beneath Evergreen Terrace.